today we are going to talk about how I manage all of my content. I have been doing 2 to 3 videos a week, along with the audio podcast, which of course also posts as a video, and a weekly email and daily Instagram posts and posts on Twitter and Facebook. And today I'm going to show you what I call my content calendar, but it's really a spreadsheet, and how exactly I fill it in. So, what I do, my basic premise for my content is that my podcast is my cornerstone of my content. And that comes out every Wednesday, and it's both an audio and video format. And then we take those formats and we put them on my blog. And then from my blog, which is on my website, we share it on social media. And when I say we, I write the content, but my people actually schedule it in using just an app that lets you schedule to send it out. And then I post on Instagram every day, at least once a week. I reference what's on that week's podcast. I might also reference if these extra videos that I do on Friday. And then, so that's my cornerstone content. That's what I'm talking about on social media and on my blog for the week. I do these extra videos on Friday that show you a little bit behind the scenes in my own business, either what I'm struggling with, what I'm working on, or to answer one of the questions you have about how I've done something, which is where this content calendar video came from. Somebody said, how do you keep track of your content? What kind of thing do you use? So I'm going to show you exactly what I use. The pillar is the podcast, and then everything else gets shared out from there. And then these extra Friday videos are like a little extra add-on. When I talk about the comic book shop, those are little extra add-ons. It's just to give you, if you're paying attention or subscribing to my emails or subscribing via YouTube, just to give you more insight, and because I like talking about the behind the scenes stuff of my business, but it's not always applicable to your business if you're a maker or artist. So that's what you're going to see in this video is the spreadsheet that I use. I will tell you this. So for years, I did everything you're going to see on the content calendar on my own. First of all, I didn't do Friday videos. I started out just doing an email every week to my subscribers and a blog post. Then I moved to a blog post. Back in 2014, I started the audio podcast. For about a year, I did a blog post, an audio podcast, and an email, and they were all different. Eventually, the podcast replaced the blog post because I realized people didn't have time to read both. And then I started doing video of me recording the podcast, the audio podcast. So at that point in 2014, I had a VA. She's still with me. And she would help me edit the emails and get them scheduled. And I would have to turn them into her at a certain time, so they would always go out on time. And that made me more consistent with my emails. So then when I started my podcast, it was able to become more consistent with that. She actually does some of the uploading it to, or no, I upload it. But she edits it inside Libsyn. So adds the show notes that I've written, it changes the title, puts the episode number in, and then schedules it to come out. And just working with someone who's double checking it made sure that I stayed consistent, because I owed it to her, right? In order for her to have time to work on it, to get it out when we promised that it would be out. And then adding the video wasn't anything extra. I just uploaded them to YouTube exactly as they were. And then when Jay started working for my company, my husband quit his job and he came on at my company. He started editing them a little bit, adding the intro. All of you guys who like the intro music on my podcast, he added that in, and the little opening credits that you see in the video. And then not too long ago, maybe a month ago, I started working with a video editor, Jolie, and that took that off Jay's plate while he's working on the comic book shop. And she's just an expert at YouTube, and Jay wasn't and didn't want to be. He's an audio guy. So he still edits the audio, Jolie edits the video, and that's why I'm doing more videos, because I don't have to worry about editing them myself, and I don't have to worry about hassling Jay about it. Plus, Jolie knows about YouTube, so she adds the right tags, and she, puts the right description and the right titles, and she makes these thumbnails be very clickable. So, I have to have that spreadsheet shareable with everybody so they know what they're working on for the week. So if I get ahead sometimes, which is great, and I record multiple podcast episodes in a week, that content calendar tells them when to actually post it. So I make it to tell me what to work on, so I'm never sitting down to a blank page. And I make it to tell them what goes up on YouTube, on the blog, on Libsyn, when. And also tells them just the title so that they know what to title it, right? Because so Jolie is doing the editing and then uploading this to YouTube, and she has to know what title to put on it. So that's how the spreadsheet works in my business. I used a spreadsheet Well, actually, I really just mostly kept an ongoing list in my own planner or journal when it was just me. But as soon as I realized someone else was going to be touching my content before it went live, I had to share with them what to touch and when. And Jess and I started using this, I think, right before I did my first big trip where I was gone for a week. And I created like 2 weeks worth of content, maybe even 3 before I left. She had to know what I did it all, but then she had to know what to edit, when, and when it would be live. That's how the content calendar comes in handy. If you don't have anyone on your team, no worries. Like I said, I did a lot of this for a long time on my own. You can do it. It's obviously a lot of work. I've hired out the parts I'm not good at and that slow me down so that I can go faster, but that shouldn't keep you from doing it. You can start a podcast on your own and then later find an editor. You can start sending regular emails on your own and then later work with somebody to edit them and find all your typos if you're like me and you just make a ridiculous amount of typos. And having a calendar, even if you're just on your own, can really help you stay on top of things. And if you're finding that you're not being consistent because you don't know what to say, deciding once what you're going to say across the whole month can really take that away. When you sit down to work on it, you already know what to say because you've already decided. So one of my favorite business tools for consistency is pre-deciding. Deciding before you actually need to do the thing, what specifically you're going to do. So do that. Write your content calendar as much in advance as you get the ideas, and then when you sit down to do it, you'll already know what to do. So I hope you enjoy seeing how I do my content calendar. This is where I actually keep my content calendar. It's not a calendar, it's in a Google spreadsheet. So it's available on my phone. I add to it. It's available to all the members of my team. I've shared it with all of them. I've attached it to a few of our tasks in Asana. Basically, there's the date. Then if anything special is going on, and then I fill in at the beginning of each month the dates. We'll go down here to February so you can see the dates and then what kind of content goes on that date. Not every date has something, but I just don't add in the dates that there's not some kind of content. And then when I come up with the title, write the title here, any notes, like if the podcast is going to do something specific or needs, I'm reminding myself what I need to make the call to action to do. The episode number of the podcast, and then this column is for the title for YouTube so that we can make a thumbnail for YouTube with the title on it. And then if it's going to get attached to a sequence. So I have several like free e-courses that will teach you about marketing, that will walk you through biz confidence. So if we need to attach it to a sequence, I put the note there. It's really to myself, and then I make sure and I tell Jess because she's the one that does that ConvertKit stuff. So this is how simple it is. Now the color coding, the blue are just videos. The yellow are things that go on my blog and need an image to go with them, a pinnable image. So Jay, he makes the images. He just looks at the yellow lines. And the reason why I do this is because we need to know, I write down the topic so I know what to record. And then I put the exact topic that I want the blog post to have, I want the audio to have, I want the video to have here so that the various people on my team who are uploading those, like to Libsyn or to YouTube, know what title to put in. Of course, you can always go back, and if I've made the blog post, they could check there, but this just has it in one document. And I don't know about them, but I have this open all the time when I'm working. So one of the questions I got about how I do my content calendar is like, how far ahead am I working? Well, right now when I record this, it is Thursday. So look, tomorrow's video on Friday is how I make my content calendar. So you can see I have about a week or two in advance. If it's not yellow, then I haven't decided for sure that's what I'm going to cover. Once I turn it yellow, it's like locked in and it's safe for Jay to make an image or edit the transcript. So like these are locked in because I know I want to talk about these on the day. At the beginning of every month, I always do a blog post about what I'm reading. So that's kind of an unusual spot, but I put it in every month. I did it again at the beginning of March. I work ahead sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes 1 week. The thing to keep in mind is that my podcast comes out on Wednesday. This is my big piece of content for each week. And I actually recorded the Tuesday before. So I'm always at least 1 week ahead. I have to record it so that it can be edited and uploaded and a transcript made and the transcript attached to ConvertKit. So that's why I have to work ahead, because I'm not the only one doing it and it goes through multiple steps. even when I was the only one doing it, I did all of those steps myself. I needed at least 48 hours to do all those steps. So it has to be done ahead of time. And then for the Friday videos, though, I usually do them the day before, the Thursday before, if not that Tuesday when I'm recording the next week's podcast episode. Now, when I have a launch coming up, like I'm going to launch my class Pay Yourself, it's actually not going to be on 3/29. It's going to be on 4/5 probably. There you go. So and the Starship dates are all wrong too. I need to update that. When I know I have a launch coming up, I try to make sure that the podcast the week or the months before relate to the topic to get people ready and knowing if they need the class or not. So if I talk about the week before how to stay on top of your accounting, should you work for free, 5 accounting terms you need to know, and if you're listening in and you're like, I know all of this, then you probably don't need to buy that class. But if it's all new information and I talk about, hey, if you want to learn more about this, sign up and you'll learn more in Pay Yourself, then you know, oh, I do need that. So it's not just to get people ready to buy, it's also to help them identify if they need it or not. Now, after I launch Pay Yourself, I'll probably do a series of podcasts that are just the kind of things people are asking either in the Starship chats or in Patreon. So my patrons tell me what they want me to talk about, and I often put those in Friday videos. If they're not something like this is really hard to do on just an audio podcast because I couldn't show you what it looks like. So it makes more sense for a Friday video. Also in the Friday videos, I'm not usually trying to teach a specific business lesson that applies to your business. I'm showing you inside my own business. So that's why I talked about post-event recovery. I talked about going to Comics Pro, which was a comic book convention. How I make my content calendar is, of course, related to my business. Yours might be totally different. And then somebody asked me, a patron asked me, like, why do you use Patreon and how could other people use it in their business? I don't really feel like that's of interest to all my podcast listeners, so I'll make a short video about it first. And then if it is and I get a lot of feedback, then I would go and put it on the podcast. So it's kind of how I think about what goes where. The podcast is always leading up to the next big thing I'm doing in my business, whether it's I'm in the middle of the Biz Confidence Challenge, which is free, or I'm about to open a new class, or I'm going to go teach. Like when I taught at Midwest Craft Con, it was right a year ago, I did a surviving conferences for introverts. So I use my own, what's going on in my business to determine what I talk about on the podcast. But then I also just take the questions people ask me when I don't have a really focused marketing focus. And there's actually a podcast episode all about how to not create marketing distractions. And that means focusing on one thing at a time that you're telling your people about. And I try to do that on the podcast. Sometimes my focus will be for a month. Like in the survey, when I asked my people what they want to hear about, they said money. They wish I would talk more about money. So I decided to dedicate all of March to talking about money. And that's actually why I'm opening Pay Yourself again. I had no intention of doing this, but people were asking me about it. So I'm going to open it in April. I'm going to talk about money in March, open the actual class for you to figure out your own numbers in April. And then I'll probably just, I don't know, I might talk about my marketing focus will probably just be to like provide people with good content on whatever the questions are that are coming up. Like if I see a question again and again in Pay Yourself, I might address it on the podcast. I have a whole bunch of content ideas, actually not that many, and a tab down here. Okay, so when people ask me a question, I come in here and I put it in, unless I've already covered it, and then I link to where I've covered it. So this, my current content calendar has this month and the beginnings of next month, if there are things I want to start writing down. When this month is over, when March is done, I'll copy or I'll cut all of these rows and I'll paste them into this 2017 content. So you can see I've already put January and February here. I'll go back and cut and paste, and the formatting doesn't always paste properly, in here. And then this is all the content from 2015 and 2016. The reason why I keep this is sometimes it's easier to come in here and search this spreadsheet for when I covered a certain topic than it is for me to search my website. Or sometimes I wonder, did I already cover this? And I'm already in the document, so I search it. That's why I keep it all here and I just don't delete it. Okay, so you can actually see right here, this is a good example. I was in Seattle and Oregon doing conferences. So I did a series on conferences for introverts. It's okay to be an introvert. Why I love conferences, stuff like that. And back at this point, I was sending a different message to my email list than I was necessarily putting on the podcast. And so I had a different message each week in my email list than I had on my podcast. And that's why those lines are here. Big list means list to the email to the entire list. Nowadays, my email to the entire list is really a collection of what I've done in the last week, right? So the last one that went out was about the Should You Work for Free podcast, the I'm Buying a Comic Book Shop video, and then a couple other free like speaking things I'm going to do on online summits. So that is what the spreadsheet looks like. People keep asking me if I use a special software. I don't. Sometimes if I'm doing a really big launch with a lot of pieces of content, this is just my ongoing content. If like a launch has an email and a podcast and then a webinar, I'll actually put that on my calendar, but like for the date that it's being released so that I can organize it all, like on my actual calendar. So you can see like I put in that I'm going to record the lessons I'm going to record on, the things I'm working on. The orange is Jay. We could take him off. Maybe I can't. Anyhow, all kinds of reminders go in here for me. So if I am putting out a bunch of pieces of content for a launch, I might go and like, this is reminding me that the Starship is doing map making this week. That I need to know. Those are emails that are going out. If I was going to do a bunch of launch content, oh, you can actually see, I put in the webinar that I'm going to do here on the 4th. And then if I was going to send a series of emails and I wanted to keep them all straight, I might put them in my calendar here because they don't really have a place here. Emails like that. I do that sometimes. Sometimes I just keep a running list in my planner with the dates next to it. And I always write everything like a week before it goes out. Well, I talked about here the actual like kind of technical side of how I do this. Like, I don't know, it's not that technical, but how I come up with content is a whole nother topic. This is just how I organize the ideas once I have it. So, you know, how I come up with topics is based on my marketing focus. Is what's happening in my business, what I'm focusing on in my business right then. It might be a live event. It might be an online event. It might be, I just want to help you guys with this certain area, something like the Biz Confidence that doesn't lead to the launch of anything. It's just something I think people need and I like to do. So my content all focuses towards the marketing focus in my business for that time. And I just take ideas from everywhere. I'm listening to my people all the time. I'm asking on Instagram stories. I'm asking on my main Instagram page and on Facebook. And then my patrons, I regularly show them a screenshot of my content calendar and I say, hey, what should I talk about here? Or what should I talk about in this podcast episode after Pay Yourself is launched? They give me ideas. I write the ideas down on my content ideas, or if I have a space for it right away, I put it in a space. Or sometimes, I don't think we're going to see it here, but I'll make a comment to myself, like how I make my content calendar. My patrons actually asked me to, or 3 questions about this. I just wrote them down in my planner, but I might come in here and insert a comment that says, don't forget to cover how far you work ahead. And then when I'm actually writing the content, I open up my content calendar, I look at what I'm supposed to be working on, and if there's a comment, I read the comment, and that gives me a place to start. The main thing is that I never sit down and don't know what I'm working on. So I hope that helped. I hope that answered any questions you have. If you have more questions, leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. It helps other people find it. And of course, if you don't subscribe, you should subscribe so you get all of my videos. Thanks so much and have a great day.